There are cars that roar, cars that gleam, and then there are cars that haunt. And deep inside the twisted imagination of 1960s television, one machine emerged from the shadows, a hot rod stitched from the remains of 3 Model Ts, dressed like a hearse, and given life by a man known for turning madness into Metal George Barris. This wasn't just another TV prop, this was Herman Munster's Koach, a rolling paradox that looked like it was built by Dr. Frankenstein himself after a long night at the junkyard. At first glance it was beautiful in a way only monsters could understand, long, dark, and dripping with Gothic elegance. But behind that eerie charm lies a tale even stranger than the family who drove it. You see, the Munsters wasn't just a sitcom, it was a mirror, a black and white reflection of American suburbia, where the freakish was normal and the normal was freakish. To give that world its mechanical heartbeat, the creators wanted something no one had ever seen before, a car that looked part funeral procession, part drag strip beast, something that would make viewers laugh and flinch at the same time. Enter George Barris and his team of dreamers. In a time before 3D modeling or digital mock-ups, they forged this mechanical oddity by hand. 3 Ford Model Ts were sacrificed. Steel was sliced, welded, and resurrected. A 133-inch handmade frame stretched like the spine of a sleeping dragon. And from those pieces, the Munster Koach was born, 18 feet of blood red velvet pearl black paint and over 500 hours of ornate scroll work. But the true story of the Munster Koach isn't just about engineering genius. It's about obsession experimentation and the wild intersection between art pop culture and pure horror. It's about how a single car built for a TV family of lovable freaks became a pop culture relic, adored, replicated, and whispered about by car lovers and horror fans alike. So buckle up, because in the next chapters we're diving under the hood of one of television's strangest creations, and trust me, the deeper you go, the weirder it gets. Before the cameras rolled and the laughter echoed through Mockingbird Lane, the Munster Koach was just a wild idea, one that would require automotive sorcery to pull off. 20. The 3-body monster. Most cars begin with a single soul, a single chassis, but this beast, it was born from 3. George Barris and his crew gathered 3 separate 1926 Ford Model T bodies, slicing them apart and sewing them back together like Frankenstein's patchwork creation. The front from one, the midsection from another, and the tail from a third, 3 automotive corpses fused into a single elongated monster. It wasn't customization, it was resurrection, and to make them alive perfectly, the craftsman had to perform metal surgery of almost impossible precision. Every curve had to match every weld, had to survive the weight of both gravity and imagination. The result was something that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. 19. The Frankenstein frame. To carry that unnatural body, the car needed an equally monstrous skeleton. Barris didn't grab something off a shelf, he built a custom 133-inch frame by hand. That's 11 feet of steel backbone, forged not by computers, but by raw intuition and torchlight. Each joint was measured with experience, not algorithms. The frame had to withstand the weight of welded metal, the props the actors and Fred Gwynne himself, towering over 6'5" in thick platform boots. It wasn't just a frame, it was a bridge carrying fiction into reality. 18. The 18-foot beast. When finished, the Munster Koach stretched 18 feet long, longer than most pickup trucks, and absurd for the narrow streets of the 1960s. It was a limousine for the dead, impractical in every way, yet impossible to ignore. Even simple tasks like turning corners or parking became theatrical events. Directors had to plan every shot around its size. It was too long for garages, too heavy for easy transport, yet somehow it moved like it had a soul. 17. Blood red luxury. Open the door and you're greeted not by gloom, but by blood red velvet. A shocking choice until you realize that the show was filmed in black and white. That vivid red translated into rich gray tones on screen, giving the car's interior a shadowy sophistication. Under the lights, the plush velvet shimmered like a secret only the cast could see, a detail crafted to be felt more than seen. 16. Black pearl perfection. The exterior, a paint so dark it seemed to absorb light itself. black pearl. A color that wasn't truly black, it shimmered purple under sunlight, glowed beneath studio lights, and whispered luxury through every brushstroke. It was automotive witchcraft layers of pearl essence, each sprayed and polished by hand, no room for error. And when it gleamed, it didn't just reflect it enchanted. Behind every monstrous creation lies a trail of obsession, and sometimes a little madness. The Munster Koach wasn't just welded together, it was forged through months of sleepless craftsmanship, one flourish at a time. 15. 500 hours of scroll work. Every swirl of steel, every Gothic curve you see on that car wasn't machine made, it was sculpted by hand. 500 hours, that's 12 weeks of pure dedication, bending and welding metal into intricate patterns that seemed to belong on a cathedral rather than a car. Each twist wasn't just decoration, it served a purpose. Those ornate lines disguised seams where the 3 Model Ts were joined. They hid imperfections, reinforced weak points, and gave the car an eerie sense of elegance. Up close, you'll notice something remarkable. No 2 scrolls are exactly alike. Each one tells its own story, a craftsman's fingerprint frozen in steel. 14. Lanterns and horns. Instead of headlights, the coach stared ahead with 2 glowing lanterns, real functioning lanterns wired into the electrical system. They didn't light much, but they didn't have to. They were there for the atmosphere. When Herman honked the horn, it wasn't a polite beep, it was a bellow powered by compressed air. The sound echoed across the Universal backlot, shaking windows and drawing laughter from the crew. Together, those lanterns and horns turned the car into a time traveler, half hot rod, half horse-drawn hearse, as if it had rolled straight out of Victorian London and into 1960s suburbia. 13. The tombstone radiator. At the front stood one of the car's most iconic details, a brass radiator shaped like a tombstone. It gleamed under the studio lights, catching reflections like a polished relic from another world. It wasn't just symbolic, it actually worked. The radiator cooled the engine while declaring to everyone watching, this is no ordinary ride. The brass required constant polishing, a nightmare for the prop team, but they kept it flawless episode after episode. That tombstone grille became the car's face-proud, chilling, unforgettable. 12. Hot rod suspension. For all its Gothic flair, the coach wasn't fragile. Underneath that dark glamour beat the heart of a true hot rod. A dropped axle, split radius rods, T-springs. These weren't props, they were race-inspired parts built for power. The stance was aggressive, the ride stiff, the handling unpredictable, perfect for a monster who didn't mind a few bumps on the road. 11. Herman's driving position. And then there was the strangest modification of all, Herman himself. Fred Gwynn, towering in full costume, couldn't sit properly in the driver's seat, so they tore it out. He drove the car from the floor, peering through the windshield from beneath the steering wheel. Every driving scene you saw was a miracle of illusion. Sometimes the car was towed, sometimes pushed, sometimes filmed while perfectly still. It looked effortless on screen. In reality, it was chaos wrapped in foam, rubber, and genius. If you think the Munster Koach couldn't get any stranger, buckle up, because what came next pushed this car from weird into legendary. 10. The one and only. Original only one Munster Koach was ever built for the original TV series, just one. No backups, no stunt doubles, no safety net. That single car had to survive 2 full seasons of feature film and endless studio handling. Imagine the pressure one wrong, turn one bad take, and the show would lose one of its main characters, because that's what the Koach was. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was a cast member. Every movement, every appearance was treated like a performance. Mechanics watched over it like doctors guarding a fragile patient, terrified that any failure could shut down production. 9. The 1984 Twin 2. Decades later, a craftsman named Dick Dean was given permission to resurrect the legend. Without blueprints or digital references, Dean studied the original like an archaeologist studying an artifact, measuring, photographing, and sketching every inch. The 1984 replica was built for parades and car shows with a reinforced frame and modern drivetrain. It was a twin, yes, but with a pulse of its own, stronger, steadier, meant to endure the open road. Still, fans often confuse the two, unaware that the second coming of the Munster Koach was an act of love, not imitation. 8. The Volo Museum home today. The original car rests in the Volo Auto Museum in Illinois, a Gothic relic preserved behind velvet ropes. It sits beside other legendary screen cars, but none command attention quite like it. Visitors describe a strange feeling when they stand before it, like they're looking at something alive, something that remembers. Every scar, every weld line whispers of a time when TV magic was crafted by hand. Even now, the museum staff starts the engine on rare occasions, letting that Ford V8 rumble through the halls like a ghost clearing its throat. 7. The $18,000 monster back in 1964. The Munster Koach cost an astonishing $18,000 to build, roughly $160,000 today. To put that in perspective, you could have bought a new Corvette or a small house for the same price. But the producers didn't flinch. They knew they weren't buying a car, they were investing in a legend. The Koach appeared in nearly every episode, shining under studio lights, its black pearl finish turning monochrome television into living art. It was expensive, excessive, and absolutely worth every dime. 6. The collectible legacy. The Koach didn't fade with time, it multiplied. Model kits die, cast replicas, remote control versions, each generation built their own miniature monster. From the 1960s AMT kits to modern collector's editions, it became one of the most reproduced TV cars ever. Children who never saw the Munsters still fall in love with it, proving that Gothic beauty never really dies. Every great car has a soul, but few carry the kind of mythology that the Munster Koach does. A strange afterlife built on design sketches, lost details, and the strange power of nostalgia. 5. Tom Daniel's lost design. Before the welding torches ever lit, designer Tom Daniel imagined something even wilder than what we eventually saw on screen. His early sketches showed a Koach with a roaring supercharger, a hood scoop that cut through the air, and sleek disc lights that glowed like demonic eyes. It was part drag racer, part Gothic hearse, an outrageous fusion of speed and death. But when the producers stepped in, they made a call that would shape television history, tone down the hot rod, turn up the haunted mansion. Daniel's design became the skeleton of what George Barris and his crew would build, still fierce, still theatrical, but refined into a perfect blend of horror and humor. It was a rare case where compromise created something unforgettable, and while the supercharger never made it to the hood, its spirit that barely contained aggression stayed in the car's stance, in every tilt of its chrome, every whisper of its pipes. 4. Racing slicks and stance. Look closer at the Koach's tires, they tell a story of their own. Wide racing slicks in the back, narrow wheels in the front, a setup straight from hot rod culture. It was more than aesthetics. Those slicks gave the monster traction, grounding its impossible weight when it rolled across the set. The front tires, slim and sharp, lifted its nose just enough to give the illusion of eternal motion, as if it were always lunging forward even while standing still. This detail transformed it from a TV prop into something alive. It looked ready to drag race through the afterlife. Even today, every replica keeps that stance. Change the wheels and it stops being the Koach. 3. The missing skull. Here's where myth bleeds into reality. Most fans remember the Munster Koach with a gleaming skull mounted above the radiator, but the truth is that skull wasn't there in the original 1960s car. It was added decades later during restoration to amplify its dark charm. And yet over time the skull became canon. Model kits, posters, even museum displays, they all include it. It's as if history collectively decided that the car needed a skull to feel complete. That small macabre addition became the perfect symbol of what this vehicle truly represents: evolution through imagination. Like every monster, the Koach has changed, piece by piece, story by story, until fiction and reality are almost impossible to tell apart. 2. Herman's costume challenges. Driving the car was one thing, but driving it while trapped inside Herman Munster's foam-padded, square-headed costume, that was pure theater. Fred Gwynn's 6'5" frame, his platform boots, his thick latex makeup, all of it made simply getting in a logistical puzzle. Crew members had to guide him, lift him, and sometimes even reposition parts of the car just to shoot a scene. The coach's interior was constantly reworked. Seats, pulled out steering columns, shifted floorboards, raised or lowered, all so the illusion could live. And it worked. What we saw on screen looked effortless, but behind every smooth drive was a small miracle of coordination and craftsmanship. On Lily's birthday surprise! If you've made it this far, you might think you've heard every strange detail about the Munster Koach, but its origin story within the show might just be the weirdest of them all. According to the Munsters lore, this bizarre machine wasn't born in a laboratory or a garage. It was a birthday gift. Yes, you heard that right. Within the story, Lily Munster, elegant undead and delightfully practical, decided to surprise her husband Herman by buying two vehicles, a 1920s hearse and a roaring hot rod roadster. Then without hesitation, she instructed a custom shop to fuse them together. The result, the Munster Koach, half death, half speed, stitched together like love itself, gone deliciously mad. It's absurd, of course. A car like this would take months of custom fabrication, dozens of artisans, and relentless precision. And yet, in the Munster universe, Lily somehow pulled it off quietly without her towering husband ever suspecting a thing. It's a perfect microcosm of the show's dark humor, a world where the macabre meets domestic bliss, and where a thoughtful birthday gift might just look like something resurrected from the grave. But beneath the joke lies something profound. The Munster Koach, both in fiction and in reality, mirrors the essence of the family that owned it, stitched together from mismatched parts, awkward, misunderstood, yet utterly full of heart. It wasn't just a parody of suburbia, it was a celebration of difference, of building something beautiful out of the broken. Think about it, 3 discarded Ford bodies, a hand-built frame, blood red velvet black pearl paint, all reimagined into something that defied logic yet felt right. That's not just car building, that's storytelling in steel. And maybe that's why after all these decades, the Munster Koach still lingers in pop culture's collective memory. Because it's not only a symbol of monster comedy, it's a monument to creativity itself. A car that by all reason shouldn't have existed, and yet here it is, immortal, glistening in museum light, roaring to life every few years, just to remind us that imagination never really dies. In a world obsessed with perfection, the Munster Koach remains a beautiful contradiction, an 18-foot reminder that imperfection welded with love can outlive anything. As the show's final line might have suggested, sometimes the strangest things are the ones that last the longest. And so as the engine fades and the echo of that deep, throaty rumble disappears into memory, we're left with something more than just a car story. The Munster Koach wasn't simply a television prop, it was a symbol, a creation that dared to be ugly, excessive, impractical, and unforgettable. Built from 3 dead cars and an impossible dream, the Koach rolled into pop culture history as both a miracle of craftsmanship and a statement of imagination. It wasn't meant to be aerodynamic. It wasn't meant to be realistic. It was meant to exist. And in doing so, it achieved something very few Hollywood machines ever could. It transcended fiction. Behind every layer of black pearl paint and every swirl of welded steel lay a team of craftsmen who believed that weirdness was worth celebrating. George Barris and his crew didn't follow trends, they created them. Long before computer modeling or CGI, they relied on sparks, torches, and instinct. Every mistake became part of the mythology. Every imperfection added character. That's what made the Munster Koach timeless. It was human, flawed, and magnificent. Over the decades, the car became a relic of a golden era when creativity outshone technology. Fans who never even watched the Munsters still recognize it, a Gothic hearse stretched into a hot rod fever dream. It lives on in model kits, museums, conventions, and memories, each one retelling the same story of how the absurd became art. And maybe that's the real lesson buried in this tale of chrome and chaos. The Munster Koach reminds us that art doesn't need logic, it needs courage. It's proof that when people push beyond what makes sense, they sometimes stumble into something iconic. In a strange way, the Koach also mirrors the very family it was built for, odd, mismatched out of place, but somehow working perfectly together. It didn't blend in, it stood out, and maybe that's why nearly 60 years later it still captures hearts. Because deep down we all carry a little of that same contradiction. We all want to be seen even in our weirdness. We all hope that the parts of us that don't quite fit might one day come together into something extraordinary. The Munster Koach isn't just television history, it's a love letter to the power of imagination, to building something beautiful from the impossible. And that's why every time it roars to life, you can almost hear the echo of a long forgotten truth whispering from under the hood. The strangest creations often tell the most human stories.